First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next we have correspondence, visitors, and public comments. I see no members of the public here. Anyone online? Don't see anyone there. So, all right. Moving along, agenda review. Any agenda amendments for us tonight, Julie?
The only thing is we would add to executive session a student disciplinary matter, just to make arrangements for it.
The other change I have is also executive session. We won't be doing the superintendent evaluation. We'll do that next week next meeting when all the board members are able to attend. That's that. Alright, so now on to the consent agenda with administrative reports. Is there a motion to accept the administrative reports?
I'll make a motion to accept the administrative reports.
Here's the first, is there a second?
Yes, I will.
And discussion. Toby was the second.
Yes, that's correct.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the administrative report, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Devin, would that be the time for people to ask questions?
Do you have
We
that?
didn't have a special
I
item,
have the item on here later on.
so we have administrators on Zoom from 6 to 6:30. So I don't know if you
Oh,
want to.
okay. Yeah, so we'll open it up there. I think the motion carried 6-0. Terry has joined us online. Were there any questions, comments for the administrative staff? We do have all our principals either in attendance or in the Zoom.
I have a question for Dan.
Go ahead, Don.
Yeah. And Dan, it's not really related to your report so much as on the follow-up the other night with the students who came to visit us with enthusiasm for FFA, and then for the notes you sent and Joanne sent for the ag meeting. Are we going to be, do we have a selection process for the people who want to go to the national? And do we have the funding so that they do not have to dig into their personal savings?
Yeah, the FFA, Elizabeth Sweet and the FFA are coming up with a process of how they are going to select the people that want to go. I would imagine that there's going to be quite a few, given how much energy they came back with and how positively the three came back and spoke about it. The funding piece is they should not have to dip into their own personal savings. That is something that we've talked about as a district. Working with Laura and working with the FFA to come up with the funding to help support the kids that want to go.
Okay. Just so I'm on the record, I'm a strong advocate for school districts to fund these types of things in their local budgets. If it was a hockey team that went to New England's, when they used to go to New England's, when we had basketball at Boston Garden, school districts funded that. Yep. Because there might be the best player might not have the money to get a bus ticket. So anyway, that's just where I'm coming from. So I hope that, FFA is good at the children or young people, I guess youth work to do fundraising, but that shouldn't be the backbone of the program. It should be the school board stepping up and saying, this is important.
Yep, and both Julie and Laura have provided support for that, so in order for that to happen. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Don. I think I saw Terry with a hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you and how they always get them to us in time for us to be able to read them, so thank you very much.
Thanks, Terry. Anyone else? Comments, questions? All All right, thanks to the administrative team for joining us online. I know some of you probably hopped on just for this segment, so feel free to drop off and enjoy the rest of your evening if now's the time, or hang on with us if you want to enjoy the whole meeting. All right, policy adoption is next. We have a policy on memorials and tributes. We've had the first reading. We're now ready for adoption on this policy if the board wishes. Anyone like to make a motion?
Yep, I will make a motion to adopt the memorial and dedication policy.
All right, Toby is the first. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Joanne is the second. Any discussion on this policy?
I think it looks really good, short and sweet, and I think it covers what we need to cover. So.
Anyone else? Seeing none, those in favor of approving the memorials and tributes policy, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions? Don and Terry, wasn't able to see your vote.
Don waved.
Don waves.
Aye.
Terry's an aye. All right, motion carries 6-0. Okay, we're on to approval of minutes. We'll take them separately. So January 3rd meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve those?
Yes, I'll make it to approve the June 3rd minutes, I'm sorry, January 3rd minutes.
Toby's the first on January 3rd minutes. Is there a second?
Don,
Don is a second.
I will,
Yep. And any discussion? No discussion on January 3rd. All those in favor of approving January 3rd minutes, say aye.
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 aye, aye.
All right, motion carries 6-0. Thanks, Don Terry. I got you that time.
Devin, I'm assuming that's both minutes, they're like two meeting, there's the both,
Yes.
okay,
Yes.
that was for both.
No, that was
No,
just
that was just the first one.
I'm sorry,
So that was the June 3rd.
yeah, but there was a business meeting and a,
yeah, they're combined on that.
yeah,
one.
right, so one motion will cover both of those.
We didn't do them as separate
We didn't do
meetings.
them as
We did it
separate
like tonight.
meetings.
We just started at 6 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay,
We're trying to simplify and not have the two sets of minutes.
yeah, that's fine, yeah.
And we're struggling with the
The
simplification.
two agendas. Yeah.
Well, I see the two headers, so it's
Right.
like, I'm thinking it's two sets of minutes, but I gotcha, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, so now, the January 17th meeting minutes, is there a motion to approve those?
Yeah, I'll make the motion to.
I'll move,
Go ahead, Don.
Don's the first, is there a second?
Yeah, I can second it.
Toby's the second. All right, any discussion on January 17th meeting minutes? Seeing none, those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0. All right. Now on to our check warrants. All right. Would anyone like to read those out, make a motion?
It is here.
Oh, yeah, I meant to sign. I have a paper copy if that's easier for anyone.
Who's on that?
I'm sorry, I would volunteer, but I don't have them in front of me. Sorry.
Sure, so, I'll read them. Accounts payable, $1,298,944.43. Payroll checks, $40,836.73. Payroll other disbursements, $1,569,043. Payroll deductions, $614,595.28 for a total of $3,523,419.44. Is there a motion to approve those check warrants as read?
Terry's making the motion.
Oh, Terry. Look it up. Terry's the first.
I'll
Is there a
make it.
second?
Thank you.
I will second it.
Toby's the second. Alright, any discussion on the check warrants? Seeing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Hi, sorry.
I saw you, Terry. All right, so now we're on to financial reports. Is there anything you wanted to say on this, Laura? Chance if you wish.
The only thing I would say is that we are, and this was in my admin report, but we are at that point in the year where we are pushing for all the purchase orders to be in for anything that's anticipated, and I think we're at a pretty good place with that. We were working with MVU on a couple different departments to make sure that we had fully encumbered things throughout the end of the year, but I think we're in pretty good shape, so that you might see that there's a bit of a reduction from last projected carryover, and that's really what that is trying to get all of those year-end costs in.
Are we still tracking to be close to the carryover number we used in next year's budget calculations?
We're always a year behind.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why we do that.
Alright. So now, I guess, I'm looking for a motion to accept.
Question,
Yep, go ahead, Don.
question?
Go ahead, Don.
I guess this is for Dan, but Dan, is this pretty much your first time working through this with department heads in the high school? And if so, how's it going? Do you feel that the people are realistic so that we don't recover more money than we might need in May?
This is the first time that we've done a lot of POs in January, but we've been working, we've always sat down, Jen and I, and Jay used to always sit down each year with all the department heads and go through their budgets with them before they submitted them. So I think it represents a pretty accurate picture of what they need, but I think we're pretty close to all the POs being in, beyond a few stragglers.
Right. The reason I ask is that, and I know business managers from 40, 50 years ago did the same thing, and principals and probably some superintendents, but I was always a little concerned that sometimes maybe if we go out too early on this PO closure, that people who maybe later would say I didn't need it. It can become a game. It can become a gamesmanship. If I know they're gonna tell me in January that I can't make any more POs, I better slap them out there and make sure. But if you feel comfortable with it, I don't have an issue, but I just wanted to make sure that you feel comfortable that somebody's not gonna come to you in May and say, you know, I needed 3,000 more, but I didn't realize it in January.
I think to be honest, Don, I think we'll run into it on both situations. We'll have some people who'll be like, I needed a little bit more than what I initially thought, and then I think people will be like, I thought I was gonna be able to go on this field trip and not be able to do it. So I honestly think, there'll be a little bit of leeway there.
Okay, good.
We're pretty close.
All right, thank you.
All right, so is there a motion to accept the financial report?
Oh, I do have one more thing. I'm sorry. We actually did receive the ag program vocational tuition payment. I forgot to mention that to you, I'm sorry, but we had thought, I had taken that revenue out because of the issue we were having, but we have received a payment, so only half, but I'm thinking we'll get together. So that was good news.
I put in a waiver and they never responded, so that was the
Maybe it was
response.
approved. It was like $100,000, so probably worth mentioning.
Does that mean we'll get it every year? Oh,
We have to meet the criteria.
okay.
And we hadn't been meeting the student hours, so I worked with Dan and Jen and the department to put a waiver into the state for our plan to meet that next year, and made the case that it's a hardship not to get grant money.
Well, thank you.
Now is there a motion to accept the financial report?
I'll make the motion, and I do have one technicality I'll discuss if we get a second on the motion.
So Toby's the first, is there a second? Terry's the second, all right.
So my issue for discussion, it's not really an issue. Laura, it's, I don't mean to be nitpicking here, but
Yeah.
I had to read it twice on the very first page. It says MVUHS local projected revenues.
Oh.
Don't you mean, you do mean MVSD, right?
Yes,
Or, right.
yes, I do, thank you.
So, I don't know if that's like been all along for every month. My guess is it's
Probably.
this is the first time I noticed it.
We see it all the time, and sometimes you don't see it,
Yeah,
and then when it
'cause-
catches your eye, we try,
Right.
yeah.
Somebody just did that today and I made fun.
That's it. That's all I wanted to.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Uh-huh.
calling attention to that.
Alright, any other discussion?
Do we approve this every month? Because this is like a snapshot in time.
You usually accept them, actually, and it's every other month,
We usually accept them.
accept them.
So is that what the motion was?
Yes.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Any other discussion? Alright, those in favor of accepting the financial report, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Oh. I saw Steve online and he typed in aye.
Very good, thanks Terry. 7-0.
Yeah.
Alright, next up is an ESSER update. This is just on here as informational, no motions here. Everyone had a chance to take a peek. So, any comments, questions, Laura, anything you want to point out?
It's a fluid document, so we update it continuously. I think it's probably the 7th or 8th time when we realize actuals versus what we're anticipating costs in certain areas, we make those adjustments. So that's been done. I do submit this every time there's been a change to any of the grant management system applications or an amendment. This has to be attached to any of the ARP-ESSER pieces of that, so. Other than that, I think the only thing to talk about would be, I have added in the proposed boiler project for Highgate that was discussed by the facility task force after the AOE's kind of push and acknowledgement that that was something that would be ESSER eligible. And talking about it with the task force, that has been added in now too, just as an estimated cost, which was necessary before I submitted the concept approval, which has been done.
And I'll just note here, I know a question comes up about where is all the ESSER funding going, what are we using it for, so these links are on the agenda for the public. There's one file which is kind of a summary level look, all color coded, and then there's a second highly detailed long document, so those who want to dive right in, that's the place to go. So links on tonight's agenda,
And the website's been updated as well.
it's also on the website.
Yes, and we have a button right on the front page of the website that makes it easier to find. And of course, anyone, please give me or Laura in central office a call if they have any questions.
Perfect. All right. Okay, that
I
concludes.
have a question for Laura.
Yeah, go ahead, Doc.
Laura,
Yep.
I don't know if she can hear me.
Yes,
Laura.
I can hear you, Don.
Okay, all right. Laura, the Highgate project,
Don, now we can't hear you.
He's muted. Yeah, looks like he's muted himself.
Can you
Okay.
unmute? Oh, there you go.
Okay,
There you
my
go.
question is, since we are having a February facilities meeting, will that issue of the boiler system in Highgate be on our March agenda for facilities?
Yes, if I get the concept approval from the AOE.
Okay, all right.
I've submitted for that about a week ago.
Because I recently had to call on Vermont Gas on a service contract I have on one of my rentals, And I think that Vermont Gas could be a wonderful resource and partner on a project like this. I'm sure John's aware of that, but I didn't want to let that go without making sure that it comes before the Facilities Committee.
We worked very closely with Vermont Gas on the last project, boiler project in Highgate and the natural gas conversion, so I would assume that would happen again, yes. But it'll be on the March agenda as long as we get that approval.
All right. Any other comments, questions on the ESSER update?
On the athletic trainer, safe and healthy schools, did we ever fill that position?
We did.
Okay.
Yes. And the funding will cover it for another year.
I know at one point we had a hard time filling that.
Well, we had a contract with the hospital and we just said we can't do it anymore. So that created a bottleneck, and we'll have to see if they'll have better opportunities in the future, but for now we have that in the budget.
All right, anything else on this? Okay, we're on to the presentation and discussion items. We're only a couple minutes early, but I think if we have everyone here, we might as well push right into it. So, Jen, are you all ready? Yeah, come right on.
Jen, do you want me to share on Zoom?
Yes, please. How's the weather? Yeah. Thanks for having me here tonight, everybody. I've got an update about the progress that we're making at all levels of MVU's MTSS. We're going to look at big picture stuff and also some small detail things, look at some recent data and also some trends that we're seeing. So, go ahead, Julie. So, just a quick visual of the MTSS pyramid. At the very bottom is the instruction that we're providing all students, core instruction, universal instruction. The second layer up, tier 2, we're doing targeted instruction for students who need targeted instruction. And then at the top level, tier 3, intensive instruction for a few students who have specific needs. And so it's a very simple view of the MTSS pyramid, and we're going to look at each one at MVU a little bit more specifically. And the other thing I'll say before we move on to the next slide, oh, it's okay, is that I'm feeling very optimistic and excited right now. We've got wonderful people in the right roles, a great team. I think we're seeing movement in a positive direction, and hopeful to share that all with you tonight. So when we're talking about universal core instruction, there are 3 big areas where we have focused a lot of attention over the past couple of years, and I'll go into each of those in a little bit more depth. One is the development of integrated literacy units. We are implementing new math resources this year from Open Up Resources, and we have been really aligning and focusing how we're using our interventionists, and one of the ways that we're using them is that they're pushing into specific classrooms in math and literacy. And so I have some data about that as well. So when we're talking about integrated literacy units, we're talking about units that include the variety of literacy skills we want students to practice frequently: reading, writing, doing research, and speaking and listening. And so those skills spiral throughout the course of the unit. We've been developing these in partnership with PLL, which is a Vermont literacy consulting firm that we've been working with for 2 or 3 years. And of the grade levels that the biggest focus has been 7, 8, 9. We're working some with 10 and 11 as well, but the primary focus has been 7, 8, Grade 9 has been implementing these units for the longest. So the data, if you click ahead one, the data should come up. Okay, wonderful. So this is the STAR data from the fall and winter administration for 7, 8, and 9. And this is the percent proficient in each grade level. Some things that I think are worth noting is that in STAR, as well as some other assessments, the benchmark of proficiency increases as the year goes on. So the target that students must reach to be determined proficient on the assessment, it increases as the year progresses. So even though for grade 7, we see very little change in the percentage of students proficient, it does mean that we're not seeing a regression, right? We're seeing students are making the progress that would be expected over the course of that time. In grade 9, the amount of progress from fall to winter is parallel to the amount of progress that the STAR assessment says students should make from fall to winter. So they are on track of making the amount of progress that we would expect in this time period. The pace of progress is not quite where the assessment says it should be for 7 and 8, but in 9 we're seeing that. And also I shaded in for grade 9, I shaded it in orange because looking at last year's winter data, grade 9's is significantly higher than it was last year. The others are all within a percentage point or so, but we're seeing a significant step up in grade 9's winter data from the previous year.
Is the proficient?
Jen, I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
Yep.
When you say you're seeing it, is it grade 8 last year and grade 9 is doing better? Or do you just mean grade 9 is doing better this year?
Grade
Or is
9.
it the same?
Yeah, not the cohort of children, but grade 9 to grade 9.
Ah, okay. And that's important, why?
I think it's showing that instructionally there are improvements, that more 9th grade students this year are showing success in the winter. And then you couple that with the jump from fall to winter, I think and that they're making progress at the rate that the test expects, I think those are all really positive indicators.
And maybe I'm jumping ahead and you're going to cover this later, but are they making improvement from the grade before to the grade now in terms of increasing proficiency, or is that coming later in the presentation?
So
The cohorts themselves.
I don't have that specific data later in the presentation. I can say that because the benchmarks change for the assessment each year, they are making growth, but I can't necessarily say right here, but I can bring it for a future date, whether more students are proficient as 9th graders than they were as 8th graders. Right now, I don't have that in front of me.
Okay, I'd love to see that sometime, thank you. In addition to all this is great. Okay.
Jen, this is Don Collins. My question may be similar to Terry's, I'm not sure, but do we have the data that where they were and what growth they might have had from fall to winter?
Could you try that again, Dawn? You cut out on us.
Okay, so why I asked is when I look at 9th graders, pretty significant change from fall to winter. Can we go back and look at those same students, or many of them should be the same students, who as 8th graders, where they were at in the fall and winter?
We can do that. I don't have that data in front of me. It's similar to what Terry was asking. We can have that.
That's what I said. I think my question was same to hers, but I wanted to make sure. I think that would be really helpful as a school board member to say, I take a group of students and see how they gain, because every year, if you talk to the 6th grade, the principals of 6th grades, they're going to say, this is the most wonderful class we're sending to MVU. And then the next year you'll hear them say, and this is not this district necessarily, but this class, this 6th grade class has been a challenge. So I always like to look at growth models rather than, well, these are the 8th graders, these are the 9th graders, but carry on.
Proficiency. I guess, is that when I think of proficiency, I think that's the bottom, the standard. Is that the case? Like, if you're in 7th grade, I would think we're striving that all of our students are proficient in reading for their grade level.
Mm-hmm.
And I am assuming that proficiency gets
Harder through the year.
right,
Yes.
8th grade and 9th grade.
Or even within the school
Within the
year.
same school year. That's what
It's-
those scores are, those benchmark scores.
So here you've got this fall 1065. To be proficient in the fall, you have to meet that point value. In the winter, it's higher. In the spring, it will be higher. The standard is higher than it was before Common Core. And then these benchmarks get you to that standard by the end of the year.
Have these numbers always been this low? Like 10 years ago, were we looking at the same thing?
Well, we weren't giving this type of assessment 10 years ago, so I can't say that for sure. I think Julie touched on the fact that the Common Core standards did effectively move grade level proficiency down a grade level in an attempt to be more rigorous. So I will say that in literacy, our STAR data tends to be lower than what our was the SBAC data had been, and it'll be interesting to see what the new testing data shows us in the springtime. What is true is we have a lot of struggling readers, which I think the next slide will show a little bit more. So the STAR assessment also gives us indications of which students are in need of intervention. So it identifies who's proficient, who needs intervention, and then there's kind of a small nearly window where they call it on watch. So that's the missing percentages. You can see that from fall to winter, particularly in grade 8 and 9, we saw a significant decrease in the number of students who needed intervention. So what that tells me is that even if students aren't moving from this lower level into proficiency, they are making progress and making gains, even though they're not meeting that benchmark. So some of the challenges that we're facing and that we're working through in terms of these integrated literacy units is that there persist a lot of traditional ideas about English instruction in middle school and high school. The spiraling of these different skills, doing them in shorter bursts, it's not necessarily how I experienced English class in school, and many of our teachers as well. So there's a little bit of unlearning about best practices in literacy. I would add that to the fact that secondary English teachers are not given instruction in teacher prep programs in reading and writing. They are not taught how to teach reading and writing. They have degrees in literature or creative writing or something like that. So there's a lot of supplementary professional development that needs to be provided at the secondary level in terms of best practice in literacy. Because our teachers are not taught how to do that in their preparation programs. And I would say there's not an abundance of that professional development. We really have to seek it out and work with partners within the state to try to provide it. It's not commonplace.
Just a quick question. Can
yeah.
you just kind of expand a little bit more? What do you mean they're not proficient in teaching it?
So to become a certified English teacher, I would pursue a degree in English literature while also pursuing a degree in secondary education. But at no point in those two programs would I receive a particular course, or it would be unlikely that I would receive a particular course about teaching students reading.
How to read.
How to read.
And I don't want to
Because
interrupt,
you're-
but I would echo that my license is 7th through 12th grade English. I remember crying my first year as a 7th grade teacher because I did not know how to teach my lowest grade level class how to read.
Because in the high school.
I was
you have to.
completely unprepared for students to come into my room not knowing how to read.
And that's a shift that we're pushing for in higher education, teacher prep programs. But essentially, any teacher that's new to any school is a very basic level teacher, and we're expected to provide that professional development, but it is definitely a missing component.
And I would say it's more present in this subject area than I see in other subject areas.
So then just tracking what you mean, so you're saying that that percentage up there needs intervention, meaning they are struggling to read,
Oh, yes.
just at.
At
so
grade
s-
level.
At that grade level?
Yep.
Does it indicate how far?
The data that we receive usually divides this group into two tiers, one that's in need of intervention and one that's in need of urgent intervention. But I would not say that, the students in need of intervention might be 2 years below grade level, and urgent intervention, it could be much lower than that. We do have, we have a team of 3 interventionists right now in literacy, and one of them is a literacy specialist, a licensed literacy specialist, which is unusual at the secondary level, so we're very excited to have her on board. And the other 2 are receiving receiving training. They're in a multi-year program through the Upper Valley Educator Initiative in, it's kind of like near White River. They're receiving specialized literacy instruction. So we're getting folks this training, but even when I talk to my interventionists about those trainings and they're in graduate coursework, so much of the instruction is about what you do K-5, K-3. There is not a lot 6, 7, 8, 9 and above.
More of that is coming to the state, and Jen's been to some trainings along with teams of teachers as well, so it's a need that people are paying attention to.
Yes, absolutely.
Terry, you have your hand up?
I do have a question, because it's kind of on my mind here, maybe because I'm not sitting there and I'm further away. I'm thinking, we're having a discussion about how teachers in high school don't know how to do, haven't learned how to teach intervention for kids that don't know how to read. Something seems wrong, like, it seems to me that those kids shouldn't be graduating. They shouldn't be passing a grade level if they can't read. What's happening with that? Why are we trying to change the education system instead of trying to change the system where these kids aren't, that they don't go into 9th grade or 10th grade if they can't read? I'm really curious as to why. Is there, I mean, because obviously if they're not teaching it in the colleges, they didn't think they used to need it, so what's different?
I don't know that the answer to that, that's a whole other conversation. Public education, particularly in Vermont, has not had high-stake graduation requirements. Some states have a test you have to pass in order to receive a diploma. Vermont has never had that.
Yeah.
And retention of students leads to bad outcomes for students, and there's 30 years worth of research on that. So I wouldn't want to derail the conversation around that, but it is certainly something, particularly as why we try and put so many resources into K-3, because closing the gap in those grade levels is easier. It's not easy, but it's easier than as students move forward. People tend to focus not only just on teaching students to read better, but also in accommodating reading text, because there's a difference between being unable to decode and being able to understand the concepts in the book. And so.
Okay, so we don't have to have this big discussion, obviously we don't, but I am just wondering, as a board member, I just think it would not be prudent for us not to ask these kind of questions, and what other districts in the state are doing. If this is a Vermont problem,
It's a nationwide problem.
that really does need to.
It's not a Vermont
I would
problem.
be curious.
It's a nationwide,
What's that?
it's a nationwide challenge, not just a Vermont issue.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Julie, if you want to skip over to the next
I
slide.
will, I'm sorry.
It's okay. So we'll shift our focus a little toward math right now. So this year, we have a district team that worked last year to select new math materials to use in our math classrooms. And the middle and high school is a little ahead in the implementation schedule than the elementary schools. They're still working through the pilot phase. But we have selected and are using Open Up resources as our math materials. And I would say that one of the things that we're adjusting to right now is that the pacing guide for the materials is much faster than the previous pace that we were holding in our math classrooms, which is a good thing. It's just taking a little bit to get used to. The design of the curriculum is that the skills that students practice spiral from unit to unit. So they're exposed to it more than once. And the faster pace allows us to approach more concepts over the course of the year. And the spiraling means that students will have multiple exposures and attempts to achieve the content. And that there are portions of each lesson in which students are engaging in exploration tasks and grappling with kind of the conceptual understanding behind the mathematics. So the STAR data, it's a very similar table from the last slide for literacy. So the STAR data for math from fall to winter, again, the benchmarks are higher. The jump is not quite as much from fall to winter in the math, for the math benchmarks as literacy. And we can see kind of those patterns there. The 8th grade, even though the number of students who are proficient from the fall to winter for grade 8 is a slight decline there. I wouldn't say that that's a significant decline, but a slight decline there. We're seeing that the pace of growth is, again, on par with what the test expects from fall to winter, which is great.
Our freshmen are on fire.
They are, our 9th graders are, they're doing a good job of performing.
It should be recognized.
Yes.
Not that not to take away from the others, but
I
it's
think
just
something
nice.
that we have noticed in terms of kind of these testing trends for STAR assessment is that our 7th graders are very eager to please when they come into the building.
Sure.
And so
Yeah,
we
that's
see,
cool.
we see pretty high STAR scores at the beginning.
Mhm.
Our 9th graders are 14 years old and school is, you know, not always their favorite thing. So our fall 9th grade data is usually a little rocky because we're still trying to build relationships and explain why it's important to students. A trend that we also see that we are working actively to combat is that our spring data is sometimes not as strong as our winter data. Usually the STAR assessment's given around the same time as state testing, and there's a fatigue that comes, and they can see the end of the school year. And so I think that the winter data is really, I think that it's the best representation of where our students are, because I think the spring data is just, we're not getting their best in May. So again, you can see here that the number of students, particularly in 8 and 9, who are in need of intervention, you see that decline as well. Some of the things that we're noticing in math, there are whole group learning gaps because of lost instruction during the pandemic. And then there are very personal learning gaps. So for example, I've been in a lot of math classrooms recently. I was in an Algebra 2 classroom recently, and they were working with exponents and radicals, and there was a lot of and those are big parts of Algebra 2. And so those were areas where there was not as much instruction because of whatever hybrid learning or closures than they had previously gotten in other years. So there's a whole group need to practice exponents, which my teachers are responding to. But then we're also seeing in math very personalized gaps in learning, depending on when students might have been out for 10 days or sick. right? So they missed very specific instruction, not what necessarily the whole cohort missed, which is making it challenging, especially while we're also trying to use new materials and the teachers are getting used to new materials. So we're working very hard to keep the pace that Open Up outlines, because that will allow us to cover more content, and that was one of the things that we know we need to do better. But the pace does not allow for a lot of time to pause and reteach content. So that's a tension that we're grappling with. And it takes time to become an expert instructor with new materials. So there's a little bit of lag time between implementing new materials and seeing the impacts of that. So in all of our 7 through 9 English, I need to rephrase that. In many of our 7 through 9 English and math classrooms, our interventionists push in to provide co-teaching or parallel instruction in specific classrooms where they've identified that there are a number of students who need that additional support. And so that's happening in grades 7, 8, and 9. In algebra this year, this has allowed us to take 2 challenging classes and split them into much smaller groups, which has helped considerably since we made that shift. And our English interventionists, our literacy interventionists were very excited because they were able to track data that in the classrooms where they pushed in, 80% of the students improved from their fall to spring, fall to winter assessments. So they could see the tangible evidence. And in fact, in one classroom, we had to remove the interventionist because of a schedule change. And that's in that classroom, the student scores declined overall. So we're seeing a lot of effective push-in and co-teaching instruction with our interventionists, which is exciting. So I made up an extra tier in the little pyramid, tier 1.5, which is around targeted practice. So there are a few things that are happening throughout the school where we're really trying to increase the amount of touch points that students have with content and get really specific practice in during their school day. So one of those things is that we took the middle school win time, which is called, stands for What I Need, and we created targeted practice choice boards, which I'll go into a little more depth soon. In all of our English language arts classrooms, there's time for sustained silent reading with independent reading books that students choose based on their interests, and also within their levels of reading. And then in math classrooms, particularly I've seen this in the high school math classrooms where the periods are a little longer, they're beginning their classes with targeted skills practice to help build some of those skills that are necessary that they need to become more fluid with. So the middle school choice boards, we're pretty excited about these. It's a little bit of a shift from how middle school WIN had operated in the past. So students have targeted practice Monday through Friday. We've always pulled students during WIN time for instruction with interventionists, and that's still happening. The big difference now is that students who are not being pulled to work with interventionists are practicing literacy and math skills in a more purposeful way. So some students are pulled for small group instruction, and the remaining students spend half of their time, it's a 50-minute period, working on math practice and half of it on literacy practice. And they have choices and options. So they have, there are 2 choice board samples there. They have, I think, 6 choices in math and 6 in literacy to get their practice in, and they can choose different ones throughout the week. Some are more problem-solving based in math, or more skills-based. Some of them are ongoing problems that they're working on over extended periods of time. Some are more games-based. In literacy, it's they're doing more reading, some shorter-term writing tasks, some vocabulary building knowledge as well. Something that was really exciting about that happened recently, and maybe Christy knows more about this than I do, but one of our math interventionists was at training last week with All Learners Network, which is a math professional development organization in Vermont. And he was telling them about our choice boards, and then was invited in the spring to come and talk about them with their organization, which is really exciting.
I'm getting back.
So the second layer of the pyramid is the targeted instruction, which we really think about in terms of pre-teaching and reteaching. So we have, in the middle school and in grade 9, we have small group intervention time. All of our interventionists pull small groups for targeted instruction during that time, and that we use the STAR data and other classroom indicators to determine who those students are and identify the concepts that need to be pre-taught often and retaught sometimes. And the other tier 2 intervention that we have at the high school level is Tburg Time. And I don't know how much you know about Tburg Time, so I thought we'd talk a little bit about that here. So Tburg Time is part of the high school schedule, and it meets Tuesday through Friday for 30 minutes each day. And the main purpose of offering Tburg Time was to provide an opportunity to offer intervention for high school students. It wasn't in the high school schedule previously, a way to call back students who needed reteaching. So teachers request students that they need to see to provide reteaching and support. And to pull this off, we have to have lots of other things happening in the building. So if I am going to take 3 students, because I need to do a focused reteaching around something, then Julie needs to take 20 students to do something else. So we have a balance of these small group reteaching opportunities that are happening, and then lots of other exciting activities for students over the course of the day. Lots of wellness activities. We've got enrichment opportunities. Our music department loves Tburg Time because it really has supplemented their offerings. Our clubs meet during that time. And some kids just want to color for a little bit. And if they don't need to be pulled to have some reteaching, then that's an okay opportunity.
When is this time?
It meets every day, like 12:45 to 1:15.
So it's outside of the regular classes?
Yes. And so the third tier of the pyramid is intensive instruction and intervention. So some of the things that we have done around tier 3 this year is that we've reviewed the AIR audit that was done for MTSS last year to try to find strategies and programs for tier 3 intervention. We have tried a few different programs in literacy. We have subscriptions to Reading Plus. I have folks trained in the Just Words program, and Freckle is one of the programs that comes with STAR that we can use with students. And we have, one of the things that's been great this year, I think it was one of the ESSER funds investments, was that we have been sending our math and literacy interventionists, coaches, and special educators, that's been really important, to different specialized trainings in math and literacy. So All Learners Network has been offering a variety of math trainings for struggling math students. And then, as Julie mentioned earlier, Dr. Sarah Lupo has come to the state of Vermont, and she really has expertise in adolescent literacy, 5 through 12, and so we've been able to send folks to her training as well.
And that's an example of an ARP-ESSER strategy that's, I think, been very purposeful to really help close that gap and give teachers that training.
So tier 3 instruction comes with challenges at any level and some specific challenges at the secondary level. There are very few secondary programs for intensive intervention. So a lot of times providing specific literacy or math instruction at the tier 3 level is very specific and programmatic. Like you can purchase programs to do that. Those don't really exist at the secondary level, which makes it a little bit more challenging. We have a lot of teacher-created materials to attempt to do this, and there are limited PD options as well. Our time during the day is limited for this because there's not really designated time for tier 3. instruction at the secondary level that doesn't pull students from either core instruction or another learning opportunity. And many students who need Tier 3 to fill these specific gaps also need the Tier 2 instruction of the reteaching of what they're working on in their main classrooms. So high levels of needs of support and only so much within the day. And we try to increase the intensity at Tier 3, which means that we are trying to create smaller groups or one-on-one intervention situations, or have the intervention meet more frequently. Again, these are things that are hard to deliver within middle and high school schedules. So some of the things that we're working on at all levels of the pyramid, we're really thinking closely as a district around increasing teacher retention. When I looked at the data, it was clear that students in groups where teachers had more experience had higher levels of proficiency and higher levels of growth in almost every case. And so retention is really important. This year, and I think this has been such a great addition to how we operate, our student support team has a PLC that meets every Friday. This includes my interventionists, special educators, coaches. We meet and we look at data, we make plans, we've really aligned our delivery around what we're providing for intervention, how frequently it's happening, what the duration is, and how we're going to track that data. Our data teams have been in place for many years at MVU, and those are important, especially for the Tier 2 reteaching that needs to happen. We have been providing some exposure professional development for UDL, Universal Design for Learning, to improve that bottom layer of the pyramid, that universal instruction for all students. And we've been helping our math and literacy folks get connected with really specific PD, especially our special educators. Some of the things that we are looking toward in the future, the district is applying for a grant to expand the STAR 360 assessment through grade 11. So we're excited to be able to look at that data beyond grade 9. We know that we need to further refine how we're implementing the Open Up resources. After going through year 1, we're going to really intentionally look at year 2 and look at how we can improve the instruction with those materials. We know that we need to move toward better literacy instruction in all content areas so that students are reading and writing wherever they are during their day. And we know we have a lot of work to get there, so that's a bigger fight. My interventionists are requesting co-teaching PD because they can see that it's effective and they want to know that they're using the best practices, which is exciting. We know we need to further pursue more Tier 3 intervention materials, and that we want to be following career and college readiness indicators to see how those compare to the information we're getting from the math and literacy schools. That was a lot of information. What questions can I answer?
Have any comments or questions? We'll open up to board members.
Can you show that pyramid again?
Absolutely.
I have a question, Devin, when it's my turn.
Okay, I've gone to Peter here first.
Yeah, sure, I'm no rush.
All right.
I'll be with you.
I'm going back for the big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The big ones at the beginning.
Okay, so this, I guess, is everything, but I'm just like concentrating on reading.
Yep.
To me, and you explained it well, and I know that you've got a good grasp on it and you know the severity, but is our pyramid upside down? Like, it seems like we have more people in Tier 3 and Tier 2 than we do in Tier 1. I mean, I know everybody is in Tier 1,
Right.
but you know what I'm
Right.
saying.
So, I'm gonna try to provide a specific example that might help. So the Tier 1 universal instruction that could happen in the 7 through 9 classroom would be that students are learning how to find the main idea in an informational passage and support it with evidence and details. And that instruction is provided in the main classroom, and the teacher has evidence through assessment that some students are not getting that skill. And she or he might do something within the classroom to try to remedy that, or they might know that they need to provide some reteaching, and that would be tier 2, right? So it's a grade level skill, and some kids just need more time. The tier 3 instruction is it's remediation. Tier 3 instruction is really grade level skills that they missed earlier in their education. It's usually a very separate set of skills than what's happening in the main classroom at the main time, at the main instruction. So it's very frequent that kids need all 3, because if a student is struggling with reading comprehension, fluency, vocabulary from previous grade level skills, they're probably struggling to find the evidence in the reading passage that they need to show the main idea. And so we have a lot of students, we have many more students who need that intensive instruction right now than we're striving for, right? We want that to be a small group.
And to your point, Peter, around numbers of students, the multi-tiered system of supports is law in Vermont. We have the handbook for that is actually in your board materials, in case anybody wants to look at that. The ideal of MTSS is that when everything is working together and correctly, you would have a small number at the top needing that. But that's a whole pre-K through 12 system working together and cohesive. And that's the big lift. That's the work that we've been engaged in here before I came and since I've been here. And through the pandemic, even when people didn't want us to do the work. So you're right. It is sometimes an interesting, there have been shifts in the language the state has used, not to have a pyramid, but call it layers, because somehow that is a different mindset than a pyramid. But then they went back to the pyramid. So it's not a perfect model for what you're trying to achieve, but the ideal of it is what we're trying to get, is that when all the pieces are working together, you have fewer students needing the intensive remediation, and that may be related to a disability, but they still need all 3 of those layers.
That's just, I mean, everyone knows, I mean, reading is so critical, and school's not much fun if you're struggling to read, and if you keep going and the students, your classmates, you can see are doing so much better than you know, it makes it even harder for you to want to keep
Absolutely.
learning. So it's like you said, we really need at the beginning to bring those students up.
The gaps get wider and wider
Right.
as students get older, and I would say that the pandemic made those gaps even more significant.
After Dawn, I have a question.
Dawn, go ahead.
Oh,
We lost you, Don.
okay, so I'm gonna direct it to Jen, even though I realize other people have been talking as we've gone along. A number of times I've heard or seen on the screen about time. Time is a factor, we all have time problems with not enough time, but what kind of options have we looked at as far as time for the students who are specifically at the top of the pyramid, not the base? I mean, are they requested to come to summer school? Are they required to do things? What are some of the options that would give more time to their instruction?
Yeah, so over the past 3 or 4 years, we created time within the high school schedule for that. So the Tburg Time piece that I talked about, but also in grade 9, there is time built in the schedule for students to be assigned to something called ACS, so that the interventionist can access them without having to pull them out of other opportunities. So we shortened high school classes by a very small amount. I think it was less than 7 minutes, so that we could create, no, it can't be that, less than 10 minutes, so that we could create that half-hour time each day for Tburg Time. The middle school schedule provides some challenges, right? We have time within it for that tier 2 instruction, but like we've said before, a lot of students need both tier 2 and tier 3, and between what the schedule is currently and the fact that we have shared staff with the high school and the length of the school day, there aren't a ton of options in the middle school right now. We're exploring them and we're trying to be creative, but it's challenging. We provide for students going into 7th, 8th, and 9th, we provide Title I summer tutoring. We send out probably 200-something letters every spring to families to invite them to that, to get supplemental tutoring in literacy and math each summer. And some students take advantage of it. I wish many more would. We don't see a significant uptake in families wanting to commit to that over the summer. So we have different opportunities during the upcoming February vacation and April vacation. We will have a few staff on hand to help students, but those opportunities are mostly about getting caught up with missing assignments and less about the remediation that they might need in literacy and math to fill gaps.
So it's more a reaction to a recent happening than it is a long-term plan for more instruction.
In terms of the vacation opportunities, yes, yeah.
And the last thing, Jen, if you could go back to your last screen, there was something came up there and I had a question.
Oh,
Julie's gonna pull it up.
I'll pull it up, don't.
I don't know, maybe you can't.
I'll.
It was about the assessment, I believe, or screening or something of 7 through
11?
11.
Yep. So,
What?
there we go. So, for years.
Universal screening,
Yep.
okay.
So for years now, we have administered the STAR 360 assessment, which is the data that I was showing you today, for students in grades 7,
Yeah.
8, and 9 in math and literacy. This early winter, the Agency of Education put out a grant opportunity for schools, districts to expand their assessments to be more inclusive of upper grade levels. So we have applied to use the screener for students in grades 10 and 11, which will give us some interesting data. We do not have staffing to provide intervention at grades 10 and 11 in math and literacy, so it will be, once we have that greater, that increase in data, it will be, we'll have to think about how we're going to use it very carefully.
Okay, just to follow up on this, so we do it for every 7th grader once they arrive in September, August?
They do it in September, again, usually in early January, and then a third time in May for 7, 8, and 9 currently.
Okay, 7. When we do it, let's take grade 7 because, many parents are very anxious. Their students are coming from a secure environment to a big school. Are the parents notified of the results of this screening?
Yep, we provide information about STAR 360 results with parents at parent conferences and any other opportunities. We've used the data now for, I would say, 5 or more years. It's a report that we share with families.
And the students take this assessment in elementary school all the way up through.
Okay. So is this going to be tied to their personal learning plans?
That's a good question, Don. We haven't really talked about where this sort of documentation might live in a student's PLP, but we certainly could. We've been really focused on career and college readiness, and certainly math and literacy are important for career and college readiness, but we've been looking more at how to get students connected with more exploratory options. But we can explore how to integrate that. I think a student who made significant progress would certainly want to attach their PLP, or excuse me, their STAR report in their PLP as evidence of their growth. It would be a good opportunity for them.
And I asked the question, I'm not saying we should, I'm not sure how great an idea it is, but it seemed at a common sense level, it made common sense. I may call you at some point and talk with you more about that. I'm quite interested in that whole issue, because I think that sometimes parents don't tie into this, they may not totally understand it. I think it'd be a very useful tool as students come out of our elementary schools into middle school. But thank you for answering my questions.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Don. I'm gonna go to Renick, and then I see Terry, so bring Terry up.
Hey Jen, so just a couple things. So we got an email from parents again this week concerning the proficiency grading. So how, if at all, is that kind of tying into like what we're seeing in terms of, because the question was brought up, like, are some kids passing and how are they passing? And is the grading in terms of like, do you meet proficiency being the benchmark and that sort of, I would say, adjusting? How is that playing into sort of the literacy and like the math grade? Do you understand the question?
Yeah, I do, and I think, I don't know if they're connected or if they're parallel, and that there are some places where we can see some connections. So I think that the big distinction I would make is that the STAR 360 is an assessment of where a student is against a benchmark at a specific moment in time without any steps taken after that assessment to help, well, I mean, the whole program, obviously, to help that student make progress. But it's not as though, oh, you took this test, let's go look at these answers, oh, we're gonna take it again, sort of thing, right? Where we're making very specific moves to help that student get closer on that specific assessment. It's more of a broader, like, we're moving you forward in a more holistic way. In terms of the proficiency-based graduation requirements, those are the grade level standards that are outlined, by the approved standards in the state of Vermont, and we give students multiple opportunities to get to them, right? So, whereas they don't have necessarily multiple opportunities on this particular assessment to reach there, right? So teachers are assessing students on these skills frequently and then taking steps in between to help them get there, maybe providing some scaffolds and supports, things like graphic organizers or other tools to help them be able to demonstrate that skill. But that's not how the screener works, it's not how the state testing works either.
Because, I mean, the way I look at it, like, from a, so like a governance point of view is like, sort of at what point if we're just towing a line in terms of the trend, and it seems like there's a lot of other factors involved, like, at what point does it rise to a level where is there an adjustment in some sort of a policy or initiative that we're doing to somehow factor in and help it? And I think that's the thing that I'm trying to put my finger on. Because I guess what concerns me is that a lot of this is presented in a way where it's like we're just fighting back this trend that just keeps happening. And I don't, not to say it's anybody's fault, but just it's just continually happening. So, maybe some options in terms of what could be changed at a higher level to help this or improve it, or maybe just find a different tool or thing to maybe help it. That's just a broad question I'm just putting out there.
Retention, that was mentioned, that's just one thing, but I don't know how that would translate into any type of board level policy, other than to retain good workers, you typically have to compensate them to keep them. And that's ties into budget, which is historically a challenge. That's just my 2 cents.
It's a good point to make at this time of year. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an example of something the board has worked over multiple years. And I think we are seeing, at Jen's point, it's the teachers with more experience that are staying here, you see more growth with those students in those classrooms. And I think that's a very important point. If I could just retain every teacher in certain grade, right? And that would be the magic. So it's one of the many prongs that we're working on, including, you know, our curriculum directors and coaches and interventionists doing a lot of research on best practice and any programmatic. So, you know, we're saying things to them like, we know this is comfortable using these materials, but we need to see growth. So we need to examine the materials you're using to see if they're evidence-based and if they're going to make a difference. And that's the work we've been engaged in for the last several years.
And the other thing I just wanted to ask, because you brought it up, was some of the after-school programs. Are there specifically like math and literacy programs? Because, you know, that also speaks to like individual, like families and students who are taking additional proactive steps that maybe are not provided throughout the day that kind of supplement what you know you guys are doing during the school day. Are there things like that that are just there are?
Yeah, in tutoring.
Tutoring is available.
Are these just not just tutoring, but just like full programs, like, you know, math clubs and like English clubs and things that are just designed to help, you know, students succeed where maybe they feel like they need more and it's not being supplied during the school day at all?
Right, so that tutoring in those subject areas with folks that it's tied to the curriculum.
And I would say also that Crossroads and After Hours programs have different offerings for students that have an area like either STEM or literacy or humanities that kind of pulls the you know, content together, even if it's more interest-based. We do see that, and I think this is probably typical of any middle and high school, that participation in those sorts of things declines as students get older.
If I could maybe just add one quick thing that I think is really important, because there's been a little bit of conversation around the connection between how does the elementary piece play into some of the things that Jen is talking about. And one thing that hasn't been mentioned is kind of at the elementary level, the challenge right now with kind of protecting the integrity of all of the wonderful programs like the ones that Jen has talked about. So we haven't had a time in our school year this year when we've been fully staffed with our academic interventionists because of our larger staffing challenges. We've had to pull them to be in classrooms to teach because of our bigger staffing dilemmas. So part of the challenge is not always so much designing what we know is best for kids. We have the data. We are able to provide the great training like Jen talked about, provide for her staff. We know those pieces, but it's the people in many cases. And we have a great intervention team on the surface, and then almost daily it is dismantled because we need those people just to cover classrooms. So the integrity of those programs that are closing the gaps, for at least for us at the elementary level, is a significant problem right now.
And even, I would say, just to add, even if we work really hard to preserve them on a day-to-day basis, that we don't touch them for day-to-day subbing, the problem becomes some of our long-term gaps. So if I have a teacher who's going on maternity leave, she's going, whether I have a replacement for her or not, and we can post, but when it's no applicants, no applicants, no applicants, and we have to put a licensed teacher in that spot, I can't take another classroom teacher. The only available licensed teachers with the experience and the expertise to teach is an interventionist who probably used to teach those grade levels or has this training. So now I filled my classroom gap, but all of those students that were getting intervention services at this young age, tender young age for reading support and math, due to COVID, due to just gaps in skills, moving from one state to another, all those things, that is kind of blown up that spot a bit. So intervention is so important and just such, you know, the holy grail, I feel like here, and it's just what's
It's a bit of a house of
constantly
cards.
uprooted right now, made worse by the pandemic for sure.
Terry?
You're on
Push
mute,
to-
Terry.
We can't hear you, Terry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So, oh, good, sorry, my computer thing wasn't working, that touch thing. First of all, I have a couple of things. I love that last slide you had up there, Jen. And I think the fact, for me, it's really helpful when we talk about, there's a couple examples you gave about teacher retention being so important because, and I forget exactly what you said the results were, how much better they were when teachers had been there for a while. And then also the idea of having those interventionists in class, services going up, you know, kids going up 80%. I mean, those are huge. And so I really think that those are our selling points. Not so much that kids aren't doing well, you know, because of COVID, et cetera, but what are we doing about it? And it takes resources and that one of these, so I would like to go back to that slide to ask you about a couple of things. But I think those are some things we should talk about. And the staffing issue, that's the other thing I wonder, because I was going to ask you how that WIN is working at the high school with all the staffing issues, if it's still working, because it's a wonderful idea. And Tburg Time too, all those things, but I could see staffing. And I just wonder, I think, thank you, some of our schools have bigger staffing issues than others, some of our buildings, I should say, have bigger staffing issues than others. Are we thinking of trying to look at the whole district staffing and see so we can make sure these interventions are happening? It just seems to me that staffing is huge. And so I was looking, so that's one thing, this universal screening, and you were talking about how that would be great, but staffing's going to be an issue with that too for interventionists. Then I didn't understand what some of those are, and I know you were thinking time-wise, but I would really like to understand more some of the things that you're doing differently that you think are going to help. For example, I think it's brilliant that pursue the tier 3 intervention materials to try and help with some of that staffing. But what is that follow career and college readiness indicators? This is really helpful for me to know what's being done and what the outcomes are from doing it.
Right, so later in the spring, we're hoping to bring a presentation to you about our partnership with VSAC in their Aspirations program, which is a program that's focused on increasing post-secondary high school or post-secondary training and education for students. And we're meeting with VSAC every other week and implementing, it's probably a 3-year, 4-year partnership with VSAC to do that. It means that we have access to more career and college readiness data for our students than we've had before because we've provided some surveys. And so there are different questions within that survey that we'd like to dig into more deeply and think about how they interact with this literacy and math data, right? Questions around how prepared students feel for post-high school training and education. And their understanding of what those options are and whether those are available to them, right? Or whether they don't see them as something for themselves. Those are the things, because ultimately that's what we're going for, right? Is that we want students to have strong enough skills that they can pursue whatever opportunity that they want to when they leave us. And we need to look at the data that tells us how ready they feel for those opportunities.
Great, and also will that incent them because they see what they could do with some of this? If they, you know, because like Peter said, it's hard when you're not being as successful as your peers to continue wanting to do it. This might be motivational to get kids to say, yeah, I do need to understand that math because I want to be able to, you know, do the geometry of stairs and stuff, I don't know, or whatever they're working on.
Right, absolutely. And I think what's nice about the Open Up materials for math is that they make a lot of real-world connections by using context problems for students so they can see how they might be able to apply those math skills in real-world settings.
Great.
Yep, and we've got a lot of exciting career and college readiness improvements this year and going forward that, Richard shared a little bit last month around work-based learning. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on.
Yeah. Now, what about the co-teaching professional development? Is that so, are you trying to get more time to do interventions by having co-teaching, or what's that all about? Or is that about the integrating the literacy into everything?
Right.
I'm curious as to what that is.
So our interventionists are pushing into math and literacy classrooms where we have data that shows that we need additional support there. And they know that they need more training in the best practices on how to do that. There are specific strategies and tools to use in co-teaching, and a lot of it is about co-planning to make sure that it is as effective as it could be, right? Having an extra person in the room doesn't necessarily mean that students are learning more. You have to do certain things to make it happen.
I think it's great the way you all have been spending time in classrooms and helping teachers, because that's got to be hard to do with so many teachers. The other thing I do wonder, though, is that other piece that was being talked about by Jen and Chris in terms of Christine and Chris about Justina, Justina, about the how are we dealing with buildings and different problems at different buildings? Are you all looking at any of that? And that might be Julie as much as Jen here, because we're talking about all of them.
We have worked to have some district-wide subs, building subs that can be used flexibly. A great example would be a sub we hired for preschool that was that we were getting licensed so that they could do some upper grade level coverage as well. So we are attacking the problem. The problem continues to be people do not apply for positions. So we're continuing, as everyone is, with a shrinking pool of applicants interested in public education.
So it's almost like we need traveling teachers instead of in addition to traveling nurses or something. It's hard, but thank you very much. That's really helpful. And that really helps me to know when you're talking about why do we need money for this kind of stuff. It's so we can retain and so we can hire, that we at least have that going for us if we're competitive to some extent. And I think it's really important for us to know those statistics that we have interventionists in the classroom steadily. You get 80% or 80% decrease, or however, going up 80% kids that are proficient, and that's huge. That really hit me about how we can do it. It's just we have to do it. We have to invest in doing that somehow. I know you all know that, but it's something that's really critical for us to get the community to understand. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
I think one of the really positive things that we have in this district that I haven't always experienced in other places is that we have a central office that's willing to hear creative ideas. We thought really kind of out of the box with some of our special ed needs for this year, and I really feel like whenever I call and pitch an idea that's really met with conversation. And so I think that's just to kind of, I don't know if we're wrapping this conversation up or not, but to end on a positive note that I think people are really willing to be creative and have creative conversations. And like Julie said, the challenge is getting the people. But I've really appreciated everyone's ability to be flexible and think about different ways of solving the issue.
Yeah, it is great. Thank you. Okay.
Jen, you started the presentation saying there's a feeling of excitement on part of the team that things are starting to move in the right direction. I think there's a reason to feel that way, and I hope that continues. The numbers we saw, especially for ELA, are encouraging, and then in both subjects, the percent needing intervention dropping is a great sign, and I hope people really are taking, understanding that we're seeing the results that they're after. And so, you know, to the point of some of the board members, those proficiency numbers are not what we hope they will be in the long run. We know that. Our district goals are set, benchmarked against ourselves. It would be nice in, you know, a presentation like this just to see some of the, I know Inspire 360 gives us the national and I don't know if state benchmarks or not, but just to know what kind of a snapshot where we compare, even though that's not our goal. And so starting to see those steps in the right direction really is what we ought to be looking for now. And I know there was a lot of questions and we're digging hard into this one. Half our kids are at that one school. This is a high leverage, you know, topic for us all. So we will certainly have lots of questions when we get to see the data. We love seeing the data. We have, so board members know and the public knows, a continuous improvement plan update is coming up where we'll get to see sort of the aggregate. We take the Star 360 K to 9 right now, right? So we'll see where we stand currently versus last year in our progress towards our district goal. So we'll get a better snapshot of that. So Jen, I appreciate it. This is a really good conversation. Keep leaning into those items that work. We know ESSER's going away and we have to start prioritizing expenditures over the next couple of years. The board wants to be able to invest in the things that make a difference. So the more you can identify at this point, the better for all of us. So.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Have a
Jen.
good
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay, shifting gears now. We have JR back there in the crowd.
Come on up, Jay.
We're gonna do communications update and talk about some budget marketing materials. We have run over on our time quite a bit, so JR, I don't want to cut you short. This is another important topic, but
Yeah,
not
Concise.
dilly-dally.
Certainly, and so my plan was to show you some of the videos we've been working on, and then explore Facebook a little bit, look at the website after that, and then discuss, you know, just sort of communications, budget, marketing, talking points for the board. Is there any adjustments we want to make to that before I begin, or?
No, dive in.
I would say though, in the interest of time, that if there are specific questions or ideas or suggestions, you know, that if you feel like we're going on too long in that department, because we all have ideas, that we could have, you know, folks email JR and Laura with those ideas,
Yep.
since they're sort of working on those together.
Yep, makes sense.
Can I add something to start off with?
Go Terry, then Don.
Okay.
You in the meeting.
Okay, I just wanted to say I've heard really good things, JR, from people about how the communication and the reaching out to the community and people feeling that engagement happening. So thank you, I'm looking forward to your presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. That's good to hear. Let me share my screen here.
Don, did you have something before we begin?
Yeah, I want to make a comment. I heard what you said about time, and I heard what Julie said. But you know, I'm going to tell you, I'd rather spend 30 minutes here tonight really flushing things out with JR and what we need to do than spending maybe 4 nights trying to pass a budget that gets defeated. So I'm just coming from a different viewpoint. I don't want 10 o'clock meetings, but I don't want to shortchange this discussion, because if we don't pass this budget, it's going to be tough with all the things that we're doing. This is a benchmark budget, maybe one of the most important ones in a decade or more for the schools. So if he wants to ramble on and run over another 30, 40 minutes, I'll stay there with him.
He's not much of a rambler, Don.
He's very concise.
Yeah, Don's permission to stay up late, so there you go.
That's right, you got it.
Thank you. Fortunately, the videos have a set time, so those won't ramble on. I'll start by showing you the video that I'm hoping to release tomorrow. just so that you can offer any feedback on that. Just bear in mind that it's not polished up, it's a little rough around the edges. The content is all basically in place, but I'll do some different effects, some color correction. Graphics might change a little bit, and of course any feedback that you have I can incorporate as well. Do we know why the sound is not playing?
Yeah, when you share your screen, you have to share your audio.
This is starting good.
Oh, I
First feedback.
Some little messages.
Yes, gotcha.
I should gauge the length of the meetings by the number of times I have to get up to pee.
Okay. All right. Let's see if that works.
The COVID pandemic.
Looks like it paused.
Yeah, I'm getting a feedback loop here.
So you,
He wants to mute on his computer, correct?
yeah,
Okay, yeah, I thought I had. My mistake, all right.
Nope.
how about if you unmute now?
Fund. Through this program, MVSD will have received more than.
Okay, here we go.
The COVID pandemic brought about many challenges, and in an effort to help students recover academically, the federal government created the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief, or ESSER Fund. Through this program, MVSD will have received more than $12 million over a 3-year period. But this grant has a strict application and approval process and is closely monitored and regulated. So our business office, school leaders, and board of directors have worked hard to ensure our investments will provide the maximum benefits with these funds. The largest and most exciting project we're able to implement with this federal revenue will be an addition to Franklin School that will create much needed instructional space and student support opportunities. This project is ideal for use with ESSER funding, as it's being used to provide space currently available in our other elementary schools to improve support and intervention for students who've been impacted by COVID. Specifically, the addition will include a dedicated pre-K classroom, 1 additional elementary classroom, a music and band room, as well as student support spaces for intervention, tutoring, and special education. This is great news for our entire district, because meeting our students' needs better in elementary school will mean better outcomes for fewer resources when those students reach MVU. Other building projects we've been able to implement with this funding include an outdoor classroom in Highgate, taking advantage of our region's unique natural resources to expand educational opportunities, and an electric sign at MVU to better communicate with our community. Additionally, ESSER funding has allowed us to implement several temporary programs that over the next few years will help all students in our district face the resonating effects of COVID on their academic journey. We've hired a truancy specialist to create systems to get attendance back to pre-pandemic levels, and a social worker and art therapist to address critical student mental health needs. The district has also been able to invest significantly in high-leverage one-time expenses like math and literacy programs designed to improve outcomes in those content areas, and professional development that will increase the effectiveness of all our teachers and staff. We've also been able to use some of the federal money to offset costs in each of our schools, such as intervention, tutoring, and technology that would normally need to come out of our annual budget, freeing up those dollars to be used for more efficient purposes elsewhere. Acquiring this funding and determining the best places to spend it while maintaining transparency and compliance with federal guidelines has been a rigorous process, but we are grateful for the many ways it will allow us to better support our students. As always, please reach out to the district office with any questions you have, and join our informational meeting at MVU or virtually at 7 p.m. on February 28th.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm hoping to get that finished up and sent out tomorrow. A lot of the stuttering was due to just the kind of connection on my screen. It was playing fine, but yeah, so that's unfortunate. But any thoughts?
Personally, I think it's too long. Would
Sure.
be the first thing that I would just, depending on, I guess, well, here's the first question. Where are we trying to share this initially?
Most of our shares, most of our views will come from Facebook.
Yeah, so I guess the one thing I'd say, it's a great video, but a lot of the analytics that we do have our work when it comes to that is that videos over 60 seconds just tend to, you just don't tend to get as many views, right? It's just, the attention span is just shorter in that medium.
Are you all talking? Because we can't hear you, or I can't hear you.
There we go.
Yeah.
I'm with Terry, I hear nothing.
Okay, thanks, I hear now.
So I guess the only feedback I would say was just, I would just say it's too long. I would just, if there was a way to just, it's great, but just shorten it up somehow.
Yeah. I think that, so I agree with you. I initially set out with the intention of making these about a minute long. The problem that I ran into with the first two videos, and the next one that I show you is also going to be long, a little bit shorter than this, about 2 minutes, 20 seconds. But just the amount of information that we're trying to fit in a comfortable way, you kind of need a little bit more time, but I hear what you're saying, and one thing that we might try is splitting it up, doing 2 videos, one that's maybe just about Franklin, and then the other stuff I could release in a second video, and that might be one way to kind of get this into a bit more manageable of a time length.
I mean, it's open, it's open for me to do, and you've done a great job. The only thing is, we've worked heavily in my work with marketing, and especially like social media stuff, and like the benchmark for a lot of videos is you just try to keep it in and around that minute mark. So even if you break it up, and then that way I guess too, also more content to keep kind of putting out. That'd be just the main thing that I would say. But I mean, it's great.
Yeah, that's good. And on the bright side, the next video that I'm working on so far is coming in under a minute. The rest of the videos that we do up until March should hopefully be a lot shorter.
Devin,
Yes, Don?
do you want to do comments at this time on that portion, or you want to move on?
Yep, we're doing comments there. Rennick was, I think he's all set, so yep, go ahead, Don.
I would not feel comfortable breaking it up. I think it needs to all flow. If we break off just Franklin School or any project, I think that's a mistake. We've spoken for a number of years that we want to work together with one school district. So I think the flow, but one suggestion I have, and Laura may need to help me out on this. Laura, when we did the $100,000 or $200,000 study of the Babcock School, was that ESSER money or local money?
It was ESSER money.
Okay, so I think somewhere in there, it would be neat just to mention, and I picked up on it when he spoke, and I thought very articulately about the fact that ESSER funds have allowed us to use some local funds for other issues. And then I thought, ooh, here would be a wonderful chance to get something in. I'm a member of MVSD, but I do live in Swanton, and I do hear from Swanton people more than Highgate or Franklin. So if there's somewhere right in there, maybe 10 seconds to use an example, whether it's ESSER money or freeing up local money, to study the needs, or however they want to, I don't think study is the word, but to confirm the needs on the opportunity of other state and federal monies might be available. So just a suggestion, but I thought it was very well done. I commend you.
Thank you, John.
Any other comments on this?
Thanks, Don, for saying the exact opposite of
I had
me.
something.
And now we see
I had a
like,
comment, Devin. It's okay.
Go ahead, Terry.
Can you?
Yeah.
Okay, Mike, I think it's great. I really like it. I love the way you put the part about when kids are young, you know, paying attention then with the Franklin. I noticed what Don, I really want to go along with what Don said there in terms of making sure there's something about Swanton, because as I was looking at that, there was something about every school with the ESSER funds except for Swanton, and Swanton is like the majority of the voters that are going to pass this budget. And I know we've spent ESSER funds in Swanton, so I just think it's really important to mention each of the buildings since you mentioned everyone but Swanton.
Absolutely. We're still working on some of the language and things like that, so we'll work together on that before it goes out.
Alright, so, I don't intend to take a vote on any of this stuff.
come on.
Which means we're basically a, I don't know, a focus group that's gonna have one person tell you make it longer, one person tell you make it short. So we are gonna leave the ultimate decisions up to you guys.
Lucky
but
you.
will-
Well, I think we are checking all the boxes though. I think there are going to be a couple that are longer because they're just a little bit more. But the snippets that we talked about, like doing those closer to the vote, are going to be under a minute. It's just quick little hot topics, so it's kind of both.
So, alright, well,
Trying to meet both needs.
yeah, let's see a few more and unless there's more on this particular one.
But it's so professionally done that,
Yeah.
and I agree with what you're saying, but it's so professionally done that I think it holds your attention. So I think that you can go over on, obviously we do want to keep them as short as possible, but, except for the glitches like you said, which will get cleaned up, I think it's excellent.
Well, I think it's actually funny because there's also too, like, different people will like different things. So, like if we just throw in a 7-second TikTok, we're good. So.
Right, yeah, and I'll talk a little bit more about that after we view this video that I've already put out and I already have some analytics on, so we can look a little bit more at, at the actual numbers that we're seeing when retention is falling off and that sort of thing. But
I have had former board members in other neighboring district, who really liked the MVU roof one that was out. He said that those are really good.
The facilities on the website.
And you don't typically hear that as a board member, like, it was just out of the blue. I'm good friends with him, he's older than me. He used to be my coach. And he's an MVU grad, but he lives in a neighboring district, and he was on the school board, and he said those are really good.
Good.
So,
yeah, that's great. I can see the numbers of how many people are watching, but it's good to kind of get that sort of human feedback. Are we ready to share on this one again?
Sure.
What's going on?
School District. In the Mississquoi Valley School District, our school buildings are an integral part of our students' education. When students feel safe and comfortable, they can focus on learning. That's why we put such a high priority on finding cost-effective ways to ensure our facilities are well-maintained and updated so they can continue to serve our community well into the future. We're proud of the work we've already done to achieve this goal. The approval of last year's budget allowed us to upgrade to more energy-efficient HVAC systems in all of our schools and start replacing outdated fluorescent lighting with modern LED fixtures. The budget we've proposed to the voters this year includes increases in spending on our facilities, so let's take a closer look at how that money will be used and why it's so important. Rebuilding the MVU roof will continue to be one of the biggest expenses, accounting for $1.1 million of the increases to the budget this year. However, these repairs are essential to limit water damage that could lead to more costly problems in the future and will benefit students from every town in our district. The section that we finished in 2022 has already had a positive impact on our students and maintenance costs. The budget increase this year will allow us to continue the plan to replace the other 5 sections of the roof over the next few years, with incremental increases to the budget that should keep the tax rate relatively stable while also avoiding a bond. More in line with our usual annual facilities costs, we have many other exciting plans in place. MVU will see renovations to another science classroom to improve educational opportunities, and additional classroom ventilators to provide greater student health and safety. Our elementary schools will see many improvements as well. Swanton School will get a new fire alarm system, providing greater assurance in case of emergencies, and Swanton students will also get to enjoy a new floor in their music room. Both Swanton and Highgate will get security upgrades, making the buildings even more secure. And there are major improvements planned for our Franklin campus too. But since that will be funded through other revenue, we'll cover that in another video. We hope this helps clarify the facility spending in this year's proposed budget, and we look forward to sharing more videos like these to make sure our community is well informed ahead of the budget vote in March. Please reach out to the district office with any questions you have in the meantime, and join our informational meeting at MVU or virtually at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, February 28th.
I have a question.
Sure. Go ahead.
I don't know if this is possible to know, Laura, but, and I don't think it is, but do we know, if I asked you what percentage of our increase is the roof? Do we know the answer to
Increase
that?
your taxes or
Yeah,
increase your
well,
budget?
I guess, well, both.
Devin can do it in his
Either-
head.
Either one, like,
The budget is 44 million and the roof is 1.1, so it's.
right, but I wanna know
Yeah.
what
Of
the
the
percentage of
increase.
our
I'll
increase.
tell you in a second.
You can tell us that,
Oh, yeah.
cause,
It's like a quarter.
cause it's a, that's what I'm getting at, it's a lot, it's a Devin just said a quarter.
Yeah.
So I don't know if
$4
that's
million
worth
or
mentioning
something.
that, right, when you said the 1.1 million, it was, we were talking about our increases there, which is, I don't know, to me, that's kinda, that was my first question, like, I wonder how much, and I've always wondered how much that 1.1 million is of our increase.
So it's like 2.5%, if the overall increase is 10%, it'd be like 2.5%.
Yeah, well, I liked, what did you say?
It's like a quarter.
A quarter
But
of the
I
4
like the
million.
quarter
Yeah.
better, but, I don't know, I was just thinking maybe something,
Well, and that one already went live, so.
sorry.
there's Not much point in changing that now.
Alright, never mind.
But
It's
I-
a great
It's
for us to
messaging.
know.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah, that was great.
definitely
It's a
something
good,
for.
thank you. I like that. When I talk to people, I'll say that. It's great.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and so just like I said, to go over a little bit of the data that I've gotten from this video so far. Despite its length, which I know is working against it, it is one of the best performers that we have of videos that I've put on Facebook. It has the most minutes viewed by about 80 minutes, and it's, well, this is all sort of excluding the COVID reopening requirements video that Julie put out at the beginning of the school year last year that kind of blows all of the other analytics out of the water.
People were paying attention.
And that's something that is gonna come into a lot of our Facebook data, is that that's sort of this confounding variable about COVID last year kind of made some spikes and things where we wouldn't normally see them. But yeah, so it tends to be second in reach, impressions, engagements, all of that stuff. And we had 90 people viewed over a minute of that video, which is in comparison to the next most viewed would be about 50 or so people. And that was, our more popular videos do tend to be the ones that are about a minute or 30 seconds. And 20% of people who watched over 15 seconds of it watched the whole thing. So that's, in absolute numbers, that's, probably around 20 people. But yeah, that's pretty good for what we typically do on Facebook. So any questions about that?
Real quick, how many people viewed the COVID video?
The COVID video, I didn't write it down, but it was something like 800. It was like way above and beyond what we've seen in anything else.
That was the one where we were telling people about coming back to school, or?
Yeah,
that-
it was you, like, doing a like.
PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah,
probably.
essentially, but
Yeah.
I think because of the nature of it and because
Yeah.
everybody had just come from being virtual only,
Right.
the previous school year, it was kind of, you know, a big deal.
Yeah,
I'm
it was-
just,
it
I'm
was
just
long.
asking to just kind of get a gauge of like what's our reach?
Yeah, well, in total, and actually, we can talk about that, because I've got some better numbers on that. We have about 1,000 followers. It's been steadily increasing. Since I took over, I kind of did a comparison of the 6 months since I've been running the page, since the previous 6 months. Our reach is up just a bit than it was last year. And just to sort of define the terms, when Facebook says reach, what it's talking about is how many users it has put our video on their feed, basically. You might also hear me talk about impressions. That's the number of times people have looked at something, but reach is going to be a more absolute number, because you can have people giving multiple impressions from the same account. But yeah, so our reach is about even as to where it was last year. And my guess is, and I'm still kind of learning how to sort of look into the data and dig in and kind of get the information that we're looking for out of it. But our visits, so people who have gone to our actual district page, are up almost 70% from where they were last year, which I think is a result of basically providing content that people want to go there to see. I think that by putting up, you know, a lot of pictures from inside the schools of kids doing fun projects, or you know, a lot of our MVU students doing career-oriented stuff, I think that by attracting people to the page to look at that stuff is why we're starting to see a little bit more engagement with our more business-oriented information. Net followers, like I said, it's about even. Our growth, we're actually a little bit down from last year, but again, I think that there are some spikes from COVID that have kind of boosted our followers last year. Comparing it to the year before, it was way up. So, any further questions about Facebook? Did that answer your question a little bit?
I could talk about this all day. No, it's good. It's good information. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and we may want to meet at some other point, because if this is something that you're doing with your profession, I'm sure there's a lot I can learn from it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. We should talk about
Devin, I just want to weigh in that I'm very pleased. I think we're moving in the right direction. I think we're doing it in a professional manner. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Don.
All right, so any other questions about Facebook or the videos?
I have a question. Is there any desire to move to any other platforms? Because I barely go to Facebook.
Yes.
You're on IG, for sure.
I'm on all of them. I have to be. I have 20-year-old kids.
Yeah, and I have sort of made some vague plans to move on to Instagram, which is currently blocked on our district, or at least on my district account. But I haven't, I haven't had
Talk
time.
to Derek about it.
Yeah, we have a guy for that.
Well, right, yeah, I know it's as simple as emailing Derek about that, but I knew I wasn't going to be moving into that space anytime soon, so it didn't seem worth it.
Is there a Twitter that goes with school?
I have a Twitter account. I have my own, and then I have a school district one that I manage. Nobody follows us on Twitter except other educators, really. So Twitter's not that big in this region. It's more Facebook, Instagram. Professionals, educators follow each other on Twitter and
Yeah.
share, mostly Chris and I and Jen share, things back and
Latest
forth
tweet?
that way, with other professionals, but not so much families. I would be very happy to give up the management of the MVSD Twitter page and just do my own, and see if we can increase that in some way, but I have not found that to be productive in Franklin County, this time.
Yeah, I also post all of our videos on YouTube as well, but it's not a platform that I think a lot of the people that we want to reach are on, so I haven't really pushed it that much. It's there just because it's easier to link to our website that way, but yeah, if you have ideas for other platforms to pursue, that we'll get a high impact for this community with, yeah, definitely stuff I want to explore.
You said you're gonna be doing other videos?
Yes, we've got a plan for 3 more videos after this.
What's the content?
We're doing one about inflation, basically that despite how much inflation is increasing prices, our equalized tax rate is basically flat to that extent. And then another one about basically the CLA, about how because of housing prices going up, that's why taxes are going up, and changing our school budget isn't going to have that big of an impact on that regardless. And then a third one about comparing the state average, what we spend per equalized people in comparison to the state average.
I just had a thought, what's our biggest expense?
Salaries, benefits.
Shouldn't we be showing our teachers, because there was one earlier that was on early education or something, it was really good. Shouldn't we be highlighting our teachers and look at, especially maybe some that have been here for a while and some of the great things that they're doing, and show that and say, this is why we need to retain teachers, we need to show, have our own superstars, and that's where we're spending the money, and that's what we're working as a board to try to increase our it's all about education, right? So this is how we're trying to do it.
Yeah. I could certainly add that in, or maybe replace one of those others with sort of just like a teacher highlight kind of thing, and relate it to the budget, like you say, is this is our biggest expense, but this is why, and this is why it's worth it, sort of thing. Any other thoughts?
My only other thought is, I've heard from different people, if you want something, you have to ask for it. So should we ever say, this is why we want you to support our budget? Because we kind of just say, these are the things we're doing, but we're not telling the real reason is, we want you to support us. We want you to support us, trying to, improve our child's education. We need your support.
It's tricky when we use the word support, because we're not allowed to spend any public dollars on trying to tell people to vote yes for the budget. So it's a fine line. So I met with a principal today. We were going through a template letter that JR developed that's going out to parents, and we so much wanted to end, thank you for your support.
Okay.
But we really can't. We can say, thank you for paying attention to this important issue, or, it was all about a letter from the principals, please, here's how, budget's important, here's how you can get an absentee ballot, really trying to not it's just like when we buy yard sales, lawn sales,
Yard signs.
yard signs. I'm combining, I'm conflating. They can't say vote yes, they have to say, please vote on March 7th.
But there's nothing stopping us from doing it.
You can get on the phone or go on Facebook and say, please, so because you're
Yeah,
a volunteer.
The rule is you can't spend public dollars.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the only rule.
So, for example, I mean, one of the things we'd like folks to do is to really, when JR puts out a video, if you're on Facebook, we'd like you to share it, share it, and share it, and share it, and share it. And you can share it and say, please vote yes, right, on March 7th, because you're doing that as a board member and not.
Well, it's the same thing with saying, you know, vote for me or vote for whoever. I mean, there's nothing stopping us from doing that.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah, and to help with that, for anybody that's on Facebook, you know, if you're not, let me know and you can opt out. But I'm gonna start sending out an email, or if there's a better way to connect with you guys, letting you know when I've posted something that you can share, that you can like, and that way it'll make it a little bit easier on you, so you don't have to patrol the Facebook page all the time, if that's not something that you normally do. But if you happen to have a lot of friends, you know, they're
Like and
more
share,
likely
like
to
and share.
see it if you share.
So part of me kind of thinks one oriented towards extracurriculars would be, I don't know if I've seen one yet, but I'm thinking primarily athletics and band, or theater too, right? Because I think a lot of people attend those events, and that is people that have a real connection with their schools. It's not so much the elementary schools, but creatively getting that in as well. I think that would be the budget supports those things to happen.
And that's a great example of the 45-second video.
Right,
that-
right. And I'm thinking particularly like what has already been in the messenger, like when I say like athletics, I'm thinking about the real good parts of athletics. Meaning like the MVU varsity girls hockey just did a pink, what did they do?
Right.
With
Pink
a teacher mentor night. That would be interesting if you haven't. And there's someone in this room who took a video of the whole community singing the anthem. So you might be able to lift that from someone. I don't know. I just think that kind of resonates with a lot of people and reminds them of the connection and that those things aren't possible. And unfortunately, many times are one of the first things a board might look towards to, because it is extra. If we ever have to be in a position to look to reduce our budget, sometimes those things are looked at first. So I think that highlighting that somehow creatively on how the budget, those programs are possible because of a budget.
Yeah, yeah, and
might
those
be-
programs are also
Yeah.
very photogenic.
Yeah, exactly, that too, yeah.
Helps as well. Just to speak.
Devin, this is Don again.
Just 1 second, Don, just to bring up a point.
Sure,
This
no
isn't
rush.
directly related to what you
No
were saying,
rush.
Toby, but I've also started putting little pop-ups on our live streams of MVU basketball games. I think it started on hockey now as well, but Northwest Access does the live streams of those, and I sent them a little pop-up that plays every 15 minutes or so that just says, you know, you can get your absentee ballot to vote if you don't think you're gonna make it in person, kind of just trying to reach that audience that is hopefully more inclined to support the school budget because they are watching school basketball, and let them know that there's convenient ways to share their opinion. So, yeah, thank you for
Pet band too.
Oh, pet band.
We're one of the only ones in the state, I think, that has an active pep band. Rice maybe, but they don't count. But there's not many. That makes us unique. Student run too, for the most part, so.
Thank you for your patience, Don. What were you gonna say?
Okay, now, something I had thought about before, and he just brought up the pop-up idea, but going back to what Toby said, that's what jolted my mind. Wouldn't it be really neat, and it's, Elizabeth Sweet and the boys that headed to Indianapolis, standing somewhere with their suitcases with a sign, Indianapolis FFA, or Indianapolis Here We Come, or MVUSD FFA, and indicate that we support these types of activities through the budget. There are people out there who would never dream that that would happen. They don't even know about the ag program. And then there are a lot of farm families who would say, that's wonderful. So that was just my comment. Something like that with our ag program.
Thanks, Don.
We've got lots of ideas.
Yeah, lots of ideas here. That's, keep you busy, Jerry.
Yeah, they're all good ideas too. So, are we ready to move on to just exploring the website a little bit and the changes that I've made?
Yeah.
So, I don't know if you guys frequent the website, you may have already sort of seen a lot of this stuff. I'll shrink it up a little bit here so that we can see it. But a few of the changes that I've made is just trying to clarify the menus. I'll admit that I'm not entirely happy with the look of this yet, but I think it's pretty functional and at least looks a little bit nicer than it did. Breaking out the sort of schools and early childhood after school programs, moving that menu down here, I think cleans it up a little bit, gives it a little bit more of a hierarchy. Putting some more important buttons right here in the front, I think has already paid dividends. And I'm starting to track analytics on the website as well. I've only started tracking that in October, and then I made a bunch of changes in December, so I don't really have that much good data to dig into. But I've got a few facts that I pulled just from January to sort of give you guys an idea. 530 individual users from Vermont or New York visited during the month of January. 360 of them went to the front page, which means about 170 went directly to a specific page. This could be links from Facebook, or likely I think that a lot of that traffic is from our employees who know where they're trying to get and just go directly to there. But some of the things that I've added, this calendar is a district-wide calendar, is something that we've been talking about and seemed to be a popular idea. So I've created, it's not the prettiest thing, but it's functional in terms of just gives you a look at, you know, what every school is doing, and, you know, school board meetings are on there. And, you know, that's something that I know has been used because we've had 63 visitors to this page since just in January. So let's see here. Our most popular page outside of the front page is the directory. So that's something that I changed it a little bit to add a little bit more information of people who work in central office, and then also adding the school administrators there. So we had 103 users visit the directory, so that's about 20% of people who come to the website go for that. Select board meetings is the next most popular page.
Oh, school board.
Oh yeah, school board. I wrote SB, so fooled myself. And yeah, so that's, I've moved just the meetings onto this school board meetings page, and then put other information like the directors on its own page. The About page, About MVSD, is one that I added, and that's actually one of our more popular pages on the site. And Careers. We had 45 visitors to the Careers page, which I don't know if that's up. I mean, it is up from when I started tracking in October, but comparatively, I'm not sure how much that tells us. Interestingly, it was a post that was our next most popular page, which was the Join the MVSD post, or join the school board for MVSD, which is fairly old at this point. It's on our next page. Oh, you know what? That post expired because it's no longer relevant, because it's too late to join the school board. So, but it was one of our most trafficked pages during that time, and I can tell that we got at least 2 people click on the petition for Highgate, and 1 person for the petition for Swanton, nobody for the petition for Franklin. But I don't know if those petitions got turned in or anything, but that's...
Not for Highgate. The Swanton petition, she didn't get enough votes, but Megan Conley is trying to do a write-in campaign.
Okay, yeah, so most of that traffic came directly from the Facebook post, so you can kind of see where that interaction is doing some good. Those aren't huge numbers, obviously, but yeah, it's A, we know what the numbers are, and B, all it takes is 1 person, so. Yeah. The last little factoid that I had related to the website was that the average time spent on pages is slightly up, and there used to be a lot of, in that sort of October to December timeframe, a lot of people visiting pages for less than 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 2 seconds, which to me says that they went to the wrong place or immediately discovered that this isn't going to be helpful. We have almost no less than 10-second visits on the page now. So when they're going to a page, they're actually spending some time on it. So that's that. I've made some other small adjustments, like adding this little accessibility toolbar, things like that. Cleaning up this sidebar, but any questions, thoughts, feedback?
Is there a link on here directly to the YouTube channel, or just to find all the videos versus scrolling through the posts?
Yes and no. We have this footer menu, which when you're on the front page, you do have to scroll all the way down, and you can follow us on the various social media platforms here. I also gave us a little LinkedIn page that I'm sure nobody visits that, but I cleaned it up a little bit anyway. But the good news with that is that if you're not on the home page, that's a lot easier to scroll to. It's a lot more prevalent. So let's say if we go to the calendar, it's just right there. So yeah, I can make that stuff more prevalent if you think that would be a good idea.
I mean, I know we have the budget information button, which is great, and we have our budget videos that would be there.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
we have other videos that you've put up.
Yeah, you have older ones that are great, and sometimes people just want to go back and check
Maybe an
out.
archive.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and a lot of those are like buried in the Facebook page, but I have, like I said, I've uploaded all of them onto YouTube, but most of them are unlisted, so I can just list those to make those more available.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that's typically, it's kind of like we don't allow comments on the Facebook page just to sort of avoid any issues that could come up with that. That's one of the reasons that I tend to put things unlisted, at least to start with, just to kind of not attract any problems that we didn't need, or wouldn't have otherwise had, but.
I think that's a good idea, no comments.
Yeah.
I was totally in favor of that.
Other things that we have planned, though, we will do the insert in the newspaper. And we will do postcards of some kind toward the budget vote. And I also wanted to make sure that I mentioned the Swanton Select Board is happy to invite, I think Don said he would go, at February 21st meeting. They would put school folks at the beginning of that meeting so that they can leave and come here. And Highgate is giving us March 2nd, which is their information meeting. And so the select board is happy to invite a board rep to that. And then in Franklin, we talked about probably having a meeting in it could be part of the select board or not, but the select board always seems to come to those meetings, or some reps from that. So I didn't know how you wanted to do that.
Yeah, I was approached about that also in Franklin. Just actually it was Dave Binion, who's the chair of the select board, was offering up the town hall to us if we wanted to go have a meeting there. We already have our informational meeting scheduled, so I told them I'd see what the group wanted. I think if we could pair something with them, I think that would be most effective, either in one of their meetings or in their informational meeting too.
Are they doing
I
it
don't
the
know
same
what their
day
day
as
is.
us, or?
I don't know their schedule off the top of my head.
I think they meet on Wednesdays.
So do you want me to reach out to,
We had an informational meeting last week, didn't they? I don't know if it was about the budget though.
has to be within 10 days of the
Vote.
Okay, so then they would
For
be.
the, no, not for
We
select
already,
board?
oh, for select board, you mean?
Right,
Oh, I
if
thought you
their
meant us. Okay,
informational
yeah.
meeting.
I
think
don't
it's-
know, I'm not sure.
Don't we also have the legislators thing coming up?
Yes, but that would help us with budget marketing, but that is Monday the 20th at 8 o'clock in the morning at Northwest Tech Center. They have a restaurant there for their culinary arts, and there'll be a legislative breakfast for just Franklin County legislators. They've confirmed some, and I sent an email out to board members inviting them to attend if you're able to. We'll all,
Are we
Yeah.
not able to ask our local legislators to put in a blurb about what we're doing with the budget? Go out there and get information and stay informed on it?
you can ask them whatever you like. I mean, the purpose
Well, I will.
is, their purpose in coming to the legislative breakfast is to hear from educators about what's important so that they can do things in the legislative session, or maybe not do things would be sometimes our preference. But they're very active, they like to do things.
Do we know
But it's
which
an
ones are gonna be there?
I don't have the list of who's confirmed. I'll have to speak with Bill Kimball and Maple Run about that. We do a lot of, as superintendents, we do a lot of that. We just had a Champlain Valley one that is, everything from Grand Isle to Addison County, and there was a good turnout there. It was in my report. We had a legislative event in Montpelier a couple weeks ago with House Ed and Senate Ed, and had lunch with them and had table talk discussions about particular topics. So we do a lot. I think it's great, but the board in particular wanted to do some legislative advocacy, so it's a good time to be present and if you're able to make those connections.
Yeah, I actually had a good conversation with Hango a couple of weeks back, spoke for a bit.
She's always very responsive to education.
I don't see, select board in Franklin has a meeting next week, and they don't have an informational meeting on the calendar right now.
So, picking on Franklin. But the town of Franklin the town clerk is really good about sending emails about updates to people that are signed up for it. If you're not
Mhm.
signed up, then you won't get one, but maybe I'm old fashioned, I like getting the email from, you know, the town, so I don't know if that would be worth sending them the video and asking them to send the video out through an email to everyone in town. I don't know if that's something that we could do or they would do for us.
Absolutely, it's a matter of, which video, we don't wanna overwhelm
No,
people
I know.
with too much.
Yep, I agree,
But,
just.
I think that's a good idea. We had good response from Highgate and Franklin with that when we were sending out information on our budget input. So, it's another avenue to get, and obviously I send things out to families before budget time. So, and the principals are sending information out on getting your ballots.
Yeah, just a way to reach non-parents.
Mhm.
Right, yeah, and I think I did neglect to mention, we had planned to do another sort of distillation of just kind of the summary of the budgets. We did this, the sort of 15-minute highlight video from the input forum, but I was gonna turn that into a more generalized, a much shorter general budget information video, which might be good to share that way too.
Alright. Anything else for us, JR?
That's all I've got for you. Thank you for your time.
Closing thoughts from board members?
Just add that ballots went to the town clerk's offices today, so they have the absentee ballots, and I know at least Highgate was mailing those out today or tomorrow. But if people are looking for absentee ballots, they are there.
Alright, go get your absentee ballots, everyone.
Highgate's mailing them out?
To people who've requested.
Absentee ballots, yeah.
It's pretty simple to request it too. If you go to the OPRSA and just, if you're registered, just click and.
Yeah, I've been trying to link the forum on Facebook posts and things, just to make it easy on people.
Great job, Mr. Chairman, to get done by 8:30.
Look at that, alright. Well, we're not done yet, Don.
You're gonna make it, you're gonna make it.
Thank you, JR.
Yes, thank you,
We
Jared.
love seeing you. I know I love
2 minutes.
seeing you.
Just try our best efforts.
Okay, so, wrapping things up here, future agenda items. We'll let the Swanton administrators present to us next time, I guess, while we're here. Thanks for hosting. And we'll get as I mentioned before, a continuous improvement plan mid-year update. Future board meetings. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is February 21st here at the Swanton Central School Library, 6:30 p.m. We do have one item up for action tonight. The first Tuesday in March is town meeting day, as always. So we'll need to reschedule our first board meeting because the folks who are elected that day won't know that they've been elected by the time we usually meet. So the proposal is to move the first board meeting in March to March 14th instead of March 7th. So I am looking for a motion if anyone is willing to make a motion to reschedule that first March meeting.
Is that in Franklin?
Yes.
That is in Franklin, yes.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
No way.
If it's not, never mind.
Alright, so Peter's made a motion,
Can I second it?
so the proposal would have been March 14th at our normal 6 o'clock time for our first board meeting of the month, so Peter's that.
Yep.
Okay, and Joanne's the second. Alright, so any discussion on moving that meeting?
I'm just thinking, is there any, I'm just trying to think of how important that first meeting is after.
Reorganization, right?
Right, but we, I mean, like, we don't have a board if something comes up, the longer, 2 weeks as opposed to a week, right?
It'll be a week after town meeting.
Yeah, it's a week.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
How
So,
many days late this year?
okay, works for me, just trying to think of what could be bad about it.
We hope not to find out.
Alright, so we have a motion on the table, any more discussion? All those in favor of scheduling the first board meeting in March for March 14th, 6 PM, Franklin Central School, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? See one abstention, motion carries 701. Okay. And then the other future board meeting we currently have scheduled is our annual budget information meeting, scheduled for February 28th, 7 PM in the MVU library. Alright, so now we have a few items for possible executive session, so I'm looking for a motion to enter executive session. We have one matter, reviewing attorney-client communications, one leave of absence request. We have the evaluation of public employees, administrators, negotiations update, and a student disciplinary matter. So motion to go into executive session.
I'll make the motion to go into executive session for those reasons specified, and I would imagine superintendent and anyone else needed? Superintendent? Just superintendent.
Alright. Motion by Toby for executive session, inviting in Julie. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Peter's a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Devin, I'm gonna sign off. I'm on Zoom and I don't think it's appropriate, so I'm gonna sign off, and those there can take appropriate action.
Okay, thanks Don. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.